Kia is stepping up a gear in its EV offensive with this stylish EV6 battery-powered mid-sized performance saloon. This car has pavement presence, the potential of a decent 316-mile driving range and an uber-sophisticated cabin, which challenges the premium makers for style and quality. There's even a super high-performance GT derivative. This is, in short, a car that rivals need to take very seriously indeed.
Well, that depends a little on the variant you've chosen. There are two in the mainstream range, both using a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery. The base rear-driven model has only just enough power, 226 bhp, to make this 2-ton EV feel businesslike away from rest. The sprint to 62 mph time for that base variant is 7.3 seconds, but 350 newton-meters of torque isn't really quite enough for a contender this heavy. The spec of this all-wheel drive dual-motor test model is much more like it. Here, the 165 kilowatt rear electric motor fitted to all EV6s is joined by a smaller 74 kilowatt motor at the front, boosting total output to 321 bhp. That provides for 62 miles an hour in 5.2 seconds and nearly twice the amount of pulling power, 650 newton meters, on the way to the 114 mile an hour top speed that all versions of this Kia share. It doesn't actually feel that fast on first acquaintance, which for us is a good thing. The delivery of torque and speed pleasantly linear and combustion-like. If you want an EV6 that does kick you in the back away from rest, Kia will attempt to sell you a top GT model with the same battery and all-wheel drive combo, but a twin motor output uprated to 577 bhp with a thumping 740 newton-meters of torque. You don't really need that GT model's manic speed, rest to 62 miles an hour in just 3.5 seconds, en route to 162 miles an hour, and you don't really need its standard adaptive damping system either, because the passive, frequency-selective mechanical springs that feature here, which can't be upgraded, combine with the multi-link independent rear suspension to produce an actually very well judged quality of ride over poor surfaces. There are 3 drive modes, Eco, Normal and Sport, none of which improve the rather gloopy feel of the steering. But the 6 available brake regeneration settings, most operable by these steering wheel paddle shifters, are effective, and careful use will get you somewhere near the quoted combined cycle drive range figures, which vary between 300 and 328 miles depending on variant. The car's sophisticated 800-volt electrical architecture means it can use new generation multi-high-speed chargers, one of which would replenish the battery from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes. A more common 50 kilowatt rapid charger takes an hour and 13 minutes to do the same thing, and your 7 kilowatt garage wall box will give you a 10 to 100% charge in 7 hours and 20 minutes. In Kia's own words, the idea here is to make a bold statement. Well, courtesy of the brand's latest Opposites United design philosophy, that's what we've got. It's all very angle sensitive. Not everyone will like it, and for mass sales, the company will certainly have to produce less divisive designs than this, if, as planned, all its cars are to be fully electric by 2035. Still, it's appropriate that as the Korean maker's first dedicated EV, this car stands out. The front looks either a little weird or rather racy, depending on your perspective. At least there's no ugly grille blanking plates like on some other EVs. The nose instead decorated with Kia's digital tiger face, an evolution for the electrified era of the previous tiger nose grille. Even more unusual is the rear end, with its tail design being of the aerodynamic cam style used to distinguish old 60s sports cars like the Aston Martin DB6. 2 spoilers feature, the larger one with these unusual side-mounted ears. This channels air down towards the raised lower spoiler that sits on top of this rather unique LED light cluster. Time to take a look inside. These flush-fitting handles springing out to greet you as you approach this top-spec model. At the wheel, you're very aware that you're behind the wheel of a new era EV, but quite a few old-style knobs and buttons have been retained, and you don't immediately feel that you'll have to spend hours perusing the handbook before you can operate anything. The driving position is lower and more car-like than you'd expect from a crossover, and the steering column's at quite a sharp angle, so it all feels a bit different, but nothing you couldn't quickly adjust to. As is the current trend, two giant 12.3-inch screens linked together for the infotainment and instrument displays, but your initial attention will probably be taken by this two-part floating centre console and by the fact that it doesn't join onto the dashboard ahead, which adds a very spacious feeling here. This dashboard doesn't need the usual lower centre stack because it doesn't have to accommodate separate climate control buttons. Not because these have been hidden away on the upper touchscreen, though you can find them there, but because this clever, narrow, multi-mode display flicks from infotainment monitor shortcuts to ventilation functions at the press of a button. The cabin's full of useful storage areas and fashioned with all kinds of quite interesting materials, though none of them feel especially premium. Still, on the plus side, quite a few of them are sustainable, and you sit on very comfortable premium relaxation seats, part trimmed in vegan leather. OK, let's take a look in the rear, which ought to be comfortable given that the EV6 has a substantial 2.9 metres of length between its axles. A long wheelbase is usually the hallmark of a dedicated EV platform, but the downside of carrying a battery pack beneath the floor is often that it eats into the available cabin height, which is why so many electrical vehicles are, like this one, designed as SUVs. Sure enough, once in the back, headroom is indeed in relatively short supply, an issue exacerbated by the fact that these rear seats are set a little higher than those at the front, and even more in this case because a sunroof's been fitted, taking further precious millimetres of ceiling room. This shouldn't be too much of an issue unless you're fairly tall, and the seat backs do recline to ease the problem for loftier folk. That higher floor means that your knees are slightly higher than they'd normally be and your thighs a little less supported, so bear that in mind if you'll be using your EV6 for longer trips. There are big pluses back here though. That wheelbase length we mentioned is longer even than that of Kia's big Sorento SUV, the largest car the brand sells in the UK, and the result is an almost limo-like standard of legroom back here. There's 990mm of it in an area that'd feel even more spacious if it was easier to slide your feet beneath the seat ahead. Right, let's finish with a look at luggage space, pausing on the way to activate something that on first acquaintance with this car you might spend some minutes searching for. The charging flap. It's been cleverly hidden here in the right-hand rear panel and incorporates a useful charge level indicator, though the flap itself turns out to be somewhat flimsy. This little lower 250-volt 16-amp socket's interesting. The EV6's charging system has an integrated charging control unit, which, as with the IONIQ 5, makes it possible for mid and top spec versions of this model to offer a clever V2L, or vehicle to load function, which works via the centre screen's selectable utility mode and allows you, via an adapter with a 3-pin socket, to use the car as a mobile power source, powering up other things from its battery. Enough with that. Let's finish with a look at the boot, operable via an electrically powered tailgate, which can rise automatically if you approach it, key in pocket, laden down with bags. The tailgate rises to reveal what looks like a pretty cavernous space, but total capacity is ultimately limited by the high load platform. These huge battery packs have to sit somewhere. There's 490 litres of space, or 480 litres in this GT Line S model, thanks to extra space taken up by the Meridian Sound System's subwoofer. Push forward the rear seat backs, and though the area won't be quite flat, it does offer up to 1,300 litres of capacity. Not all EVs in this segment give you extra storage space for the charging leads beneath the bonnet. The Volkswagen ID.4 doesn't, for instance, nor does the BMW iX3. But you do get that here. Few brands are able to satisfy both the affordable and the luxury ends of the mid-sized EV market, but Kia is planning to be one of them. This EV6 takes the technology that impressed us with cars like the e-Niro and evolves it to a level appropriate for a customer looking for a faster, more premium kind of mid-sized EV. In our design section, we talked about this Korean maker's aim to make a bold statement with this EV6, and that's not just about the avant-garde styling being served up here. Unlike most of its segment rivals, this Kia has an 800-volt electrical architecture, so it's already prepared for the fastest ultra-rapid public chargers. And you can even charge auxiliary devices from its battery. It's all rather impressive. And we'd wish for some more feelsome steering and slightly more engaging drive dynamics. And there are a few areas of cabin trim that aren't quite up to this car's price point. Overall, though, the EV6 is the Korean brand's most accomplished car to date in terms of design, style and technology. It can equal anything on offer from the German premium brands, yet do so at a more affordable price. Certainly, if you were about to sign for something like a Polestar 2 or a BMW i4, the EV6 is a car you should try first. We think you'll be surprised at what you find.